Nurture and support. Nurture and support. This is a podcast theme song. And it's really short.
Nurture and support begins in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, kids, and welcome back to Nurture and Support, a recommendation podcast. I'm Kelly Toole, at KELLYTHUL on Twitter, and with me, as always, advancing the Amazon Prime directive is Mel.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mel, at Karmic9 on Twitter, and this is episode 70, and Kelly has not misspelled his name.
This is like, I am on a roll. It's going to stay up. I've misspelled many other things, and I've gotten dates wrong, but I continue to be able to spell my name. So
That's awesome, because I would totally misspell my name if I had to spell it every week.
I only got 9 letters. I better be able to pull it off. So.
Cool.
Alrighty, pretty excited to give my recommendation for this week. We're just going to kind of jump right into it. I'm going to have a movie/documentary recommendation, and it's kind of interesting because this documentary kind of reaches out and touches past recommendations and all sorts of other interesting things, so I think it'll be pretty fun. And it's also, shockingly enough, created last year, 2014, released in 2014, so
Wow.
Unusual for me to be that up to date, but there we go. Anyway, the name of the documentary is Atari Game Over, and it is a document. Have you seen this, Mel?
No, I have not seen it, but I believe I've added it to my queue.
Highly recommend watching it. It is pretty fun. It runs, I think, a little over an hour, maybe closer to an hour and a half, but not too bad lengthwise. But it is a fascinating story. I mean, a big part of it is it's to a certain degree they're telling the story of Howard Warshaw. You might say, well, who's Howard Warshaw? Howard, you remember a little video game called Yar's Revenge on Atari?
Yes.
It was one of
Yes,
their
I do.
very first games.
Yeah.
It was one of the very first games that had a backstory written to it. That backstory and that game were developed by Howard Warshaw. And of course, Yar's Revenge, at that point in time, the CEO of Atari's first name was Ray, and Yar's is Ray backwards. So it was pretty cool on there. But this is a story on how Atari, which had become, they had released Pong, and Pong became quite a big hit
Yes.
with everyone. And then they said, hey, we can kind of make the arcade available to everybody by developing the Atari 2600, which is still, I think, about my favorite game system I've ever had. I liked the 2600 because it was just, it typically didn't take you too long to understand how the games worked, and it was fun. Yeah,
Missed those days when there was just a joystick and a button.
One button, yes, and
Yes.
it was a little more straightforward back in the day. Things have gotten a little more complex.
Yes.
But the 2600 came out. Atari's rolling. Yar's Revenge sold multiple millions of copies, so they've got lots of money coming in, and everything's going great. And so they kind of a lot of this is Howard telling his story on his involvement there, with the other backdrop of the documentary itself is filming the urban legend that there was this dump in New Mexico where they had gone and buried millions of copies of the Atari video game E.T. And
Yes.
so that legend, urban legends out there, did they do it or not? A lot of people were convinced they did. And so part of it was working with the dump librarian. I don't know, the guy who kind of knew where everything was at. And they had some photos where they had actually had some shots of what looked, of some games being dropped, and they were based on the angles and all that. We think it's in this area. And so as the story is being told, they kind of keep checking back in to this excavation group that is busily trying to find the millions of E.T. games, which is depicted early in the documentary as the worst video game of all time. Mm-hmm. And they jumped on it a lot. So we'll come back to that a little bit. So you got Howard. He's talking about the early days of Atari, and so this is on the West Coast. It's a bunch of geeks. It's a bunch of engineers. And I don't believe they had a particularly strong substance policy at Atari during this time. And so it was a wild and crazy time at Atari as they were creating these games, selling millions, and all those types of things. So Howard does, yes. So Howard does Yar's Revenge. It goes really well. He does Indiana. So then they started doing some of the licensed software, and so he did Indiana Jones, the Indiana Jones Atari game, which if you see the Indiana Jones character, it's I guess he's got a hat. It's a little yellow guy with a hat. I mean, you're pretty limited in Atari. It's pretty pixely, but that game also did incredibly well. So he was the guy.
You really had to use your imagination back in the Atari days.
Yes, you did. So,
and I didn't miss it at all. We didn't miss all those flashy graphics at all. They were awesome games. That's
right. So I think maybe we've talked about this on a past show. I'm not sure. Adventure? Did you play Adventure on Atari? So with the dragons and the sword and.
I don't think that I played that one. I don't think that I did.
Of the Atari family, that was my all-time favorite, and it was one of the first games with an Easter egg in it, where eventually you could find a secret room and grab a little invisible dot. You find it, and you carry it over to another section, and you would get the programmer's name was in this other room. And so it was one of the early instances of an Easter egg from there. But Adventure was fun. On the Activision front, which would also run on the Atari 2600, huge fan of their football game, because it was 4 linemen that each play you go block up, block down, and you run and pass, and it was pretty darn fun. So, and got a lot of use out of those. So it's kind of neat because as they're telling the story, they're going back and they're talking about a lot of these classic games and all that, and they keep cutting back to the dump, the landfill, where they're trying to find the stuff, and they bring in a lot of equipment, and they say, well, what we're doing is we're going to we think this is the area, and so we're kind of augering down there, and we're going to we've got archaeologists here, we're going to pull stuff up, they're going to go sort through it on the table, and we're looking for things around a particular date. And so if we can find a newspaper or, mail, we know we're at the right level. And so they kind of keep coming back and, oh, not yet, we found a Donnie and Marie poster, no. So they're doing that. And then they cut back, and a lot of people are making their way to the landfill to observe this, including one Ernest Cline.
Yes, I was hoping you were going to mention him.
Because who seems like a really cool dude, as he kind of talks through it. He's like, Ernest is my fancy smancy author name. You can call me Ernie. He's got a shirt with Ernie on it and all that. He just seemed really, really cool. And then he gets even cooler because I didn't know this, but he apparently owns a DeLorean.
He had 2.
2 DeLoreans.
Yes. And
George R.R. Martin is borrowing his DeLorean, so part of the storyline is, well, I loaned my DeLorean to George Martin. I got to go pick it up to drive down to find the E.T. games.
Yes. I've recommended Ernie Cline's book, Ready Player One, which is being turned into a movie, everybody, and he gave one of his DeLoreans to a winner of a contest based on Ready Player One. So there's where the other one was. If you haven't read that book, you really need to go read it, especially if you're listening to us yammer on about how awesome Atari was. It's awesome. It's an awesome book, and it was in a recent Loot Crate, which is like crazy cool. So so he's in there, and so you've got this neat ties to some Back in the Future ties and DeLorean, and you've got that stuff going on. You got George Martin, and they kind of they have a lot of fun in putting this documentary together in terms of, and it was Zach Penn who was responsible for really assembling all this, and it's really kind of cleverly done, because after you get the George Martin kind of connection, when they cut back, it's the Game of Thrones like introduction with the buildings coming up to show it to it. So it's all really very clever and cute. So you've got that, you got the Ready Player One connection. Ernie's there, and he's very, very cool. He's making his way there. Howard is making his way there because this is a big thing. Because then they start to get underneath the covers here of, Atari is the thing. Hundreds of millions of dollars, going great. And then E.T. comes out. And in the process of E.T. coming out, they're like, we've got to spend a lot of money to the tune of, I believe, $120 million perhaps,
to secure the licensing rights to E.T. and we're going to build a game for the Atari for E.T. But we've got to have it in the stores by Christmas, or it's all shot. So they fly Howard on a Learjet to meet with Steven Spielberg. He pitches his idea of what he's going to do for the game. Spielberg likes it, and they were like, "Great, Howard, we'll move a bunch of equipment in your house, and you need to have the game done in 5 weeks." So he's got 5 weeks to code E.T. Typically, what they were saying is that the typical development was around 5 to 6 months, so pretty tight window to do it. Early on, they were talking, and this is interesting because early on you've got some people going through and they go, "Oh, it's a horrible game, totally hate it," because all you do is fall down in a hole, fall down in a hole, fall down in a hole. But as it kind of goes further, folks like Ernie say, "You know what? I like this game. It's actually a pretty good game." And when Howard finishes it, they fly him back out, and Spielberg plays it and gives his stamp of approval. So, this is a good game. So it goes out, some good initial sales right at the beginning. They get it out before Christmas, a lot of the Christmas sales. And then Howard says, "I'm walking down the hall, after Christmas, and everybody's coming up to me going like, 'We don't blame you. It's not your fault, and you shouldn't worry about it.'" And he didn't really know what they were talking about till it became clear that what was happening is a lot of people really did not like this game, and they were returning it. And so this had now started to swing up where, there's a lot of and the biggest thing was there's such a strong disconnect between E.T. the movie, the visuals, the storyline and whatever, and then the Atari version with lots of limitations in really what you could do. It was a pretty pale, there wasn't a kind of a logical transition between the two. And it was put together in 5 weeks, so it's going to probably have some holes here and there.
Right.
So so everybody, the conventional wisdom was E.T. was the game that killed Atari. And a lot of the folks that are involved with Atari at the time or in gaming or those types of things said, no, it wasn't E.T. It was the behavior around letting something like E.T. happen, giving somebody 5 weeks to put it together, spending ridiculous amounts of money to secure licensing, assuming you're going to have, in an already saturated market, that you were going to continue to grow exponentially. And so they kind of poke around on that a little bit and kind of hear both sides of it. And then they cut back again. Oh, and then they do Howard put in some Easter eggs in E.T. Now, did you play E.T.
No, we really didn't. We were very limited. My parents were one of those people that bought into that whole we could only have supervised video game playing time, and we only had a few games. So I believe I had a friend who had it, but I never actually played it. I did watch some other people play it, but I never got to play it.
Yeah, I've never played it. Right around this time, I guess it was actually after E.T. I turned on Atari when I saved up my dollars and spent what must have been close to $60 for Pac-Man on the Atari, which is horrible, which is the most horrible thing. And I thought, this is going to be Pac-Man. This is going to be great. I love Pac-Man. And it is, I hated it so much. And it was so much money for such a piece of crap.
I think I played Pac-Man on Atari, and I don't remember having a problem with it.
I hated it. It was so bad. It didn't even look like Pac-Man. It was, but anyway.
Yeah.
So, back to the landfill. They're digging through, and all of a sudden, they find a box. They find a box that says E.T. on it. They find a couple more cartridges, and they kind of keep pulling them out. And then they go, but we've also got, they found Missile Command and this and that. And so, it's stories evolve over time. And so, maybe it's not so much a dump of thousands or millions of ETs as much as a company that's kind of going down, getting rid of their inventory. So
yeah.
So it's that it. So I don't, I've kind of given you a lot of the big facts I'll go through, but it's not really spoilers. It's just a fascinating thing to watch. It's neat to see these folks. It's neat to see Howard and kind of how he is coming to terms with this, because he a lot of him's talking about, this was like one of my first jobs at Atari, and I was like, how can I possibly ever do anything as cool as this again? And then to kind of have it end on how it ended.
Right.
And then he's, you get kind of a storyline. He's bounced back. He's got stuff going on. But he has always, he was the guy that did Yar's Revenge. He was the guy that did Indiana Jones. He was a big, influential guy. But then he got stuck with the 5-week project to do ET, and because of that, a lot of the other engineers and developers have gotten awards over time and recognition, but he never has, and that's unfortunate, I think. But
yeah. Well, it's one of those prime examples of way back when. We see it all the time now, but people who didn't play Atari back then might not actually realize that before the internet, which it's hard for some of us to remember how we gamed before the internet, you didn't get hot fixes. You know, you couldn't download an update that fixed some bug that shipped with a game. And so nowadays we're used to a new release game not working right because they rushed it out the door to make Christmas sales. This is a prime example of how they shorted a game and ruined it because they wanted to get it out by the holidays. So, and you can't fix it in that situation because Atari was not fixable. It was a little hardware cartridge that you slid in. There was no update. You couldn't fix it after it shipped. So that's very unfortunate, but I have fond memories of my Atari days. I wish we still had our Ataris. I wish we did. Oh.
My brother-in-law has mine. I may have to get it back because I miss it. And then the cool thing is, of course, I took it to college with me because that's what you do. And at that point, had gone big time because not only did I have a decent number of games, I had the wireless controllers for the Atari.
I didn't even know there were wireless controllers for the Atari.
Yes, so it is the same kind of 3-inch by 3-inch square joystick on the top, but then it was powered like with D-cell batteries, so it was like almost like a lantern battery. It was a big heavy thing, but it was wireless and it worked great, and so you could sit there and play your football and your other things there. So
and build up your upper arm strength while you're at it.
Yeah, because it was not light, but it was a wireless controller, so that was pretty cool.
I didn't even realize they had those.
Yeah. So Atari Game Over, great kind of gaming history, some interesting stories of people, some nice guest appearances by famous people in the process. Kind of fun to hear and to kind of hear about the culture of Atari and the development. And so it's a fun thing to watch. So that would be my recommendation for this week.
Cool. I'm going to have to move that on up the queue. I saw that the other day and added it in, but I haven't watched it yet. So I wondered if Ernie was in there because he was all over Twitter back when he was actually making that trip and talking about it because he was uber excited about going. So
yeah. He gets a pretty decent amount of screen time.
Yeah. Cool. I love him. And if you haven't read Ready Player One, what is stopping you? You really need to go read that book because I loved it. I know some people that didn't love it, but I don't think they were gamers. So if you're a gamer, you really need to read Ready Player One. So my recommendation this week is going to be for a YouTube channel called Threadbanger.
Really? No, I shared with you before the show. I'm having some kind of block site issues sometimes. And what are you doing to this show?
I'm sorry. I'm going to continue to get our website blocked at Kelly's work. Threadbanger is a craft type show. It has been around in different sort of iterations for a very, very long time. I sort of rediscovered it recently. I hadn't watched it in a long time, though I was still subscribed to their YouTube channel. It had just, when you've got your older subscriptions on YouTube, they kind of get moved down the list, and they don't show up on my new feed list very often. That probably also is because I don't check it all that often. And I just a cute aside here. They do all sorts of crafts, not just like knitting, but way, way back when I first started knitting, Corinne is the lady. It's run by Corinne and Rob. Corinne had done a quick little knitting video on how to make this cute little button cowl that you wear around your neck, and I was trying to learn how to make a buttonhole for the first time, and her video was one of the most helpful ones that I had watched way back when I first started knitting. And of course, I'm an awesome knitter now. Yes, so I have Corinne to thank for that. what the show does now, instead of doing, they used to do longer episodes that did all sorts of different areas of. Corinne does a lot of sewing, did knitting, things like that. What they are now and what they've been doing for at least the last year is they have two main shows that they're showing these days. One is called Man versus Pen, and then the other one is Corinne versus Pen. So what they're doing is, if you're a fan of Pinterest, and there's always those big funny posts that come along of Pinterest fails, where people have tried to do something that was looked cool, craft, easy, promised to be super simple craft project on Pinterest, and then it's a total mess and a total disaster. So what they do is take recommendations from their viewers on the next pin that they're going to do a video on. And it's very humorous. The one that pretty much said, I have to share this with the world, though they really don't need my help because they just hit 1 million subscribers on YouTube. So they're not hurting for viewers, y'all. But they are very entertaining. And this episode will come out after Easter. And this isn't it's sort of Easter related, but Rob decides that he's going to try to needle felt an Easter bunny. It's a pin that's on Pinterest, and if you're not familiar with felting, needle felting is a way to felt wool by hand. So basically, you've got a bunch of sharp needles and a big wad of just plain wool. It's not, wool gets spun and turned into yarn. This is just a wad of wool. So you've got this ball of wool and you're stabbing it with these sharp needles to basically create a big mat. And it's a very intricate, you can make some very intricate little animal type figures from it. Cool stuff pops up all the time that's been hand needle felted. But anyway, it's a very dangerous hobby in that it's dealing with a large number of very sharp stabby needles that you don't have a lot of control of. So Rob is just hilarious when he does these little projects because he is very colorful on the language front, and he always hurts himself. And you can imagine how many times he stabbed himself with these needles. And there's blood all over this little bunny that he's trying to make. So if you're sensitive to bloodshed, you probably shouldn't watch this video because it is quite bloody and you won't like it. But I found it absolutely hilarious because, quite frankly, it mirrors a lot of my craft projects of complete disasters in which I actually hurt myself. But it is very, very, very funny. That particular video is just, to me, drop dead funny. They've got a whole bunch of them. They cover all sorts of things. The ones where you make gummy worms out of Jell-O and straws. Corinne does one on that to show you how that's not really going to work. And just all sorts of cool things. The Galaxy apple is another one that I remember seeing all over the place. And Rob tries to do that one, basically where you melt Jolly Ranchers and coat an apple with it instead of using caramel. So you can watch that one and see how well that process goes. But if you look through all of their video history, as it's getting about time. If you're a big Halloween fan, you need to start thinking about what your Halloween costume is going to be. And they have a whole bunch of costume idea videos from last year. They haven't started doing this year's yet, but I believe they're working on it. So it's a nice, cute, very funny. They are a very funny couple that gets into all sorts of different craft stuff. I like crafts, so I find it interesting, but I think even if you're not terribly interested in actually doing the crafts, they're very humorous to watch the antics of other people, because Rob in particular does not pretend to be incredibly good at any of this crafting stuff. Corinne is a master sewer. She's much better at actually performing a lot of these crafts, but you'll find that most of these pins that she is trying to do don't necessarily work out very well. So you shouldn't feel too bad if you've tried a bunch of those Pinterest things and they didn't work. So their channel is called Threadbanger. They've been around forever. I love their name. They cover all sorts of things from making t-shirts to any sort of craft project you could possibly imagine. They have tons and tons and tons of old videos. Chances are, if you're looking at how to do something, they've done something on it. But their current series of Man versus Pen and Corinne versus Pen is highly humorous, and I really recommend people check it out because I really have not laughed that hard in a long time as I did at that felted bunny episode. That was just great. So I suggest everybody go watch Threadbanger because it's highly enjoyable and colorful language.
Yeah. So we won't use it because I want to be able to access our our site from work. But Banging ET would be a good name for this episode. But I don't think we're going to be able to do that. So we'll stay away from that.
Yes.
I've never ever heard of needle felting before. It sounds like something made up. So I'm gonna have to check that out.
You've seen it because I don't know if it was a year ago or 2 years ago, but I remember it going around. There was an absolutely amazing felted Ludo from the Labyrinth that was up on Etsy, and I see that picture circulating all over the place even today as people rediscover it. And he was made by needle felting. It's an amazingly intricate art. I mean, people that get really good at that, they can sculpt these facial features and all sorts of neat stuff, and it's just out of wool that basically you're matting together with a barbed needle. And it's very labor intensive. I mean, you're stabbing this little piece of wool thousands of times to get it to all mat together like a big dreadlock. It's really amazing, and I have never done any of it. I've seen the little kits for it, and I've watched a few videos, but I much like hit Rob's video here, I think I would hurt myself probably pretty badly. I deal with needles at work all the time, and I stab myself on a regular basis. So this one, high velocity needles, gonna hurt myself. So
yeah, I think I'll be an observer. Maybe there'll be like a Twitch channel for needle felting, and you can just kind of watch that. That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Alrighty, we'll go ahead and move into social media recommendations. Mine for this week, it's a young lady on Twitter, and she's only got about like 87 followers or so right now, so we need to dial her up because she's awesome. Her handle is Kelly Tweets 22, so she's unfortunately got a guy's name, Kelly, but it's Kellie Tweets 22, number 22, and have run into Kelly basically between she watches Walking Dead, 12 Monkeys, Helix, and Better Call Saul. So we're in the same place a lot in terms of that. And I've just always, she's funny, she's interactive, she likes to retweet, keeps an eye out for some fun stuff, retweets some things. So it's just always one of the best parts of watching these shows is the group of people you start to see some familiar faces on a regular basis. And she's been across a number of shows that I've been watching here recently, and she's always fun, and so I thought that's the kind of recommendation you want to make. So if you like Helix, Walking Dead, 12 Monkeys, Better Call Saul, Kelly's a great follow. So Kelly Tweets 22.
All right. Let's all get Kelly Tweets 22's follower count up and scare the crap out of her, and she'll probably leave Twitter.
Yeah, then she'll be gone, yeah.
Because that's the other thing we're good at is Twitter stalking people.
Yeah, that's right. Ruining Twitter for people.
Oh, which is why my social media recommendation this week is not on Twitter. Mainly due to Kelly and Mike and everybody else being all into this Instagram thing. I've started using Instagram, and all these knitting people I know use it, and so I haven't gotten really steady about checking it very often. But one of my original follows when I set up an Instagram account ages ago and then promptly forgot about it was the National Geographic channel on Instagram, and it's Nat Geo, Natgeo. And as you can imagine, what they're famous for is their amazing photographs from all over the world, new and old, and that is basically what their Instagram feed is. And there's always an article attached to the photograph telling you what it's about and where it was taken and the artist that did it, the photographer that took it, and all of that cool stuff. And I just love, I love that magazine. I've loved it since I was little and finally had to stop collecting all of them because, they add up.
Yes, they
So, so
big stacks of yellow binded
yes, yes.
awesomeness.
So, next best thing, follow them on Instagram where their entire feed is nothing but pictures. I love it. So, they have amazing photographs. And if you like not just animals and nature and everything, but photos from all over the world covering all sorts of topics, and they're all just beautiful. So, check them out if you're an Instagram person. And if you are an Instagram person, find me and Kelly on Instagram.
Yeah, it's weird that you started that off by saying, because I wouldn't have depicted your like typical Instagram users as Mike or I, in terms of
No.
I wouldn't have said, oh, I bet you they do Instagram, but I like it. I mean, I don't hit it nearly as hard as Twitter, but it is just it's a great place to get some stuff out, and there's just tons of super cool stuff out there. And so I there's never a time when I don't go to Instagram where I don't come across 2 or 3 things that I think are just simply awesome. So
Yeah, I'm still trying to learn all the little nuances, but I've figured out how to search for tags and things like that. My only other gripe that I have with it, and maybe it's an app issue, I don't know. The Instagram app on my iPhone, when someone comments to you, I would really wish you could just reply back to that comment instead of having to actually at the person that did the comment separately, because especially if they don't follow you, it gets a little, my memory is not that good, and I always have to go back or write it down so that I can remember it long enough to actually type it in. So I have a problem with the reply function in there, but other than that, I'm figuring it out. And I don't know if it's just me, but my share, if I share a photo that I've added people in the comments, and I know it's because Twitter ats are not quite the same as your Instagram ats, but when you share that to Twitter, the at mark disappears, even if the person's account name is the same, and that is irritating to me. Why would I share it to Twitter if I wanted it to take that at out? So anyway, those are my nitpicks.
yeah, I'd love to have the reply when someone's commented on one of yours, and I wish it just had that just come up here recently where it's like, well, I hope I've interacted with them so that they automatically fill if I start typing their name in or I'm already following them, because otherwise it is a real pain in the butt.
Right.
You know why I joined Instagram, Mel?
Why?
Out of spite.
Spite?
Spite.
Who were you spiting?
iPhone people. Because Instagram was originally only available for the iPhone for a long time.
Oh.
And then Instagram released their Android version.
Mm-hmm.
And the iPhone community blew up. We had people saying, I'm deleting my account. The Instagram, this was the only photo it was for. Now there's going to be all these crappy Android pictures. I don't want to have any part of it. It was just like, it was this pure, pristine group of artists that were doing Instagram, and now the great unwashed rabble that use Android are coming on. And so I was like, you don't like it? I think I'll do it. Just to go in and do it. Just to be a pain in the butt.
That's funny because I've had an iPhone since the 2nd gen, and I didn't have an Instagram account. Maybe I made an Instagram account way back then, but I've never used it really until recently. Now I believe Flickr is the default, which I do have a Flickr account, which I find a lot easier to send photos to than Instagram. But there's not the interactivity on Flickr as there is Instagram. So anyway, that's funny.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was hilarious too. It was just, because there were just people that were indignant, and it was, about how the quality was going to go down, and I'm like,
what quality?
I'm pretty sure there's like there's no, if you can type an email address in, you can have an account, and it's not like you have to go to school to get an Instagram account, and so I don't know, it's fun. But I do like it. It's fun to kind of play around with it, the features within it, to kind of dink around and make some improvements to your photos. But just to share the visual, and just I do find myself now when I'm some places going like, oh, wait a second, I need to go get that. That's an Instagram thing, because it's just neat little moments or interesting things that I would have passed by before. So
yeah.
So take that, iPhone people. So, but that seems to have gone. They got over it, I guess, and it's fine now. But so
I think you could always access it over the web, though, so you really didn't even have to have a phone to have an Instagram account, because you've always been able to access it online.
Yeah, but the whole point is the ability to kind of deliver new content, and then even when the Android app first came out, it didn't have all the features that the iPhone app had, some of the tilt shift and all that cool stuff. So, but
I never use the filters. I'm an unfiltered type person. I don't filter.
I'll scooch up the contrast on occasion for sure. And then black and white's kind of cool every once in a while too. So alrighty, well that I believe is a show 70 of Nurture and Support. We're gonna have to figure out how to title this bad boy. That'll be fun. But, a couple good recommendations, some fun social media stuff. So thanks everybody for listening. Mel and I are gonna hand it over to our good friend Matt, who will give you all the particulars on how you can interact with us. Shoot us some recommendations. We would totally love recommendations from you on Twitter. Our stuff's out on YouTube now, so you can go ahead and just throw something in the comments there if you want to as well. And just get those recommendations coming away. We'd love to share those as well.
Yep, we would. So
all right,
we'll be back next week.
Thanks, everybody.
You can contact us on our website, nurtureandsupport.net. or email us at nurtandsupp@gmail.com. That's NURTANDSUPP@gmail.com. Or tweet us at nurtandsupp on Twitter.
Nurturing and supporting.